Like most of Brexit itself is really hard to talk about because we've mentioned this before and it's very, very well worth repeating. There were no policies attached to Brexit. They were just sayings. But there was one thing in particular that has been really misconstrued to be a policy because just like Brexit, it has yet become another pointless saying that you now hear Brexiteers, Brexit supporters, even the Brexit media themselves say when there is no clear plan, there is no substance to it, there is no plan for it. And of course, what we're talking about today is the term Global Britain. Yes, the very much post-Brexit strategy that was vaunted by the Brexiteers was this post-Brexit Global Britain. But this, again, does not play into the realities of how modern trade works or even how modern trade flows are interconnected and how the world is connected today. So before we jump into that today to explain just again what another pointless slogan saying Global Britain is and expecting it to actually mean something is, please do remember to hit that like and share button, and of course down below there is links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee where you can, well, buy me a coffee, and thank you to all those people who do support me that way. So today's article comes from The Guardian, and of course we're discussing the Global Britain, but the article is called Strong on Rhetoric, Weak on Substance. So much for the vision of Global Britain. Global Britain is a catchy slogan. There is a delicious hint of recovered greatness through this time not imperial but global. It also neatly deflects the charge that leaving the EU is a rampant little Englandism. Instead, it is the EU that is made to seem parochial and inward-looking. What's more, it represents ambition. Global Britain will be a great power as we used to be, cutting trade deals with the world, sending our fleets east of the Aden again to project naval power as part of a pivot to Asia, and taking a lead in upholding democracy and rule of law. The wartime engineer Bud Flanagan can rest easy. Who do you think you are kidding, Remainers, if you think old England is done? The government has the country locked in a dad's army mindset. Boris Johnson as Captain Mannering and his cabinet of stupid boys orchestrating our global advance against the Remainer naysayers. Witness his jubilation last week over the US lifting punitive tariffs on Scotch whisky, trumpeted as a victory for post-Brexit Britain, as embarrassing as it was ignorant. A day later, the US suspended all punitive tariffs on EU exports for a 4-month truce in a bitter Airbus-Boeing trade dispute during attempts to reach a settlement. In any case, we are on the EU side. Airbus and its supply chain are 6 or 7 times more valuable than whisky exports to the US. Moreover, if Airbus retreats from the UK, we lose one of our last remaining big company stakes in high tech, and a potential champion in the fast-growing space industry. But facts must not get in the way of the Global Britain fairy tale. This month, the government is to publish the much-delayed integrity review of how Global Britain's new-look foreign defence, aid and trade policies will hang together. Captain Boris gave a preview in a speech to the Munich Security Conference last month. Again, embarrassingly, he argued that the aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth's maiden 20,000 nautical mile voyage was emblematic of a recovered independent great power ready to shore up the depressed West, complete with 35 borrowed American F-35s and flanked by a US destroyer. There may be virtue, a signal of agility perhaps, but to be first to impose sanctions on, say, Belarus, but for President Alexander Lukashenko, that is a pinprick. What matters is EU sanctions, which Britain has lost its capacity to influence, further appealing to Chancellor Angela Merkel and President Emmanuel Macron in an abandoned joint EU foreign policy to revive with Britain and the US and the old Cold War Quad, was the delusion of a madman, especially as all the other leaders have been talking about refashioning the joint EU-US relations. I too read Radar Haggard and R.M. Ballantyne and C.F. Foster and G.N. Hankly as a schoolboy. A world of gallant Brits beating down foreigners, mainly the French, and natives as they tried to paint the globe red with British colonies, dominions and protectorates. But at the same time, the new bulletins were full of British troops dying in Aden and Borneo for no obvious purpose. The futility of the white settlers' unilateral declaration of independence in Rhodesia. Harold Macmillan was right to talk about the wind of change, and Harold Wilson to abandon a defence presence east of the Aden. It was obvious that Britain's pretensions as a great global power had to be recast, but those novels represent what was already history. But it was not even history even now to those Brexiteers, for whom the essence of Britishness is to dominate, show the way, and down to Johnny Foreigner. Ed Balls, the former Labour cabinet minister, recently played the Dad's Army Brigade the honour of taking them seriously in a paper. Finding Global Britain, written with colleagues at Harvard's Kennedy Centre, Britain was not going to remake the world trading system, re-innovate the West and advance the cause of liberal democracy by itself, he argued. To be a force for good, it could not and should not be. It had to be more modest, casting itself as an honest broker, an alliance builder, and above all, stay friends with the EU, whose power we have to leverage to get anywhere. The sane, level-headed stuff, but sanity and modesty are not why we are in the daft place that we now inhabit. Even basic arithmetic eludes Johnson's gang. Trade Minister Liz Truss parades the advantages of a trade deal with the US, worth an addition of a 0.16% of a GDP over 15 years if it can be pulled off, and becoming a Pacific power by joining the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is worth even less. These are meant to compensate for the estimated loss of up to 2.92% GDP from leaving the EU's customs union and the single market. And shallow trade deals in goods, even in the glamorous Pacific, do not make up for the loss of the deep trade arrangement encompassing the services we have now trashed with the EU. Nor is HMS Elizabeth a latter-day nemesis. The British gunboat that sank the Chinese war junks to win the First Opium War and thus Hong Kong. The Chinese have long memories and will make the unfortunate connection even if we don't. These are the also astute judges of power. They know the projection of military force with borrowed planes and no economic backup is a complete expensive farce, and no less laughable is to boast about soft power in the wake of coming with staggering cuts to the UK aid programme. So to some of the poorest countries in the world, they are exposed last week to a leak to the open democracy. If only the destitute and the dying in Yemen or Somalia lived in Tory marginals, they might have been able to expect something much better. Brexit is an act of self-defeating folly. Our long-run growth rate declares the official budget responsibility has now sunk to just 1.7%. And we report today that the introduction of customs checks on the EU goods in April and July is to be deferred because of fears of food shortages. Trade flows between the UK and EU are in crisis. The country does not have the capacity or values to be a force for good. But global Britain is a complete hoax. The Home Guard that Dad's army so wonderfully lampooned were the last honourable men. The same cannot be said for any of the army currently inhabiting number 10. And yeah, it's completely true. Once again, this harkens very much back to the imperial fantasies. Like I say, there's why on earth are we sending an aircraft carrier to this part of the world? It's pointless. It's as was said there. It's an attempt to replay some sort of gunboat diplomacy. But as it said there, military power not backed up by any economic power is complete folly, and it is just a complete laughing joke when you remember that aircraft carrier has borrowed American planes and is escorted by a US destroyer. you know. But these are more of the things I'm sure that we can look forward to, pretending to be a great power again. And again, it's going to be a colossal waste of money. And it's going to achieve exactly nothing. As was said there, doesn't matter that we have a trade deal, even if we do manage to get one. Doesn't matter if we join the TTP and get into that. It does not replace the loss of services and goods that we lose from not being in the single market and customs union. So, thanks for watching. As always, please do remember to hit that like and share button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can buy me a coffee. And thank you to those people who do support me that way. And as always, we'll see you all next time.